Straightforward question. Who's going to work in all the coffee shops? The Home Secretary Priti Patel outlining her plans for a post-Brexit immigration policy. Now, as I mentioned there in the beginning, on the face of it, what's not to like? Who doesn't want the brightest and the best working in their country, contributing to our infrastructure and our economy? There are clearly problems already here. Firstly, how realistic can this policy be? Now, it's all very well having a points-based system. If you don't score 70 points, you won't be able to come to work in the UK. So they've got this figure of 70. That's how it works. But what about areas and industries where it would be impossible to reach that required score? Already, the government have made concessions in this area. We know there's been concessions over visas for health workers. Fruit pickers, remember not so many months ago, fruit pickers flown in to this country because there was a shortage. Students being able to stay after their courses are finished. So you're already seeing parts of that policy kind of diluted, and it's likely to get worse. Is there any way around this? Because it's all very well wanting the best. Who doesn't want the best? But we do need, and here's the problem, we do need low-skilled workers. There's likely to be workers who don't reach the threshold either in terms of money or the kind of skills that they have. So, I mean, I've been talking about this for you. And by the way, can I just say that the term low-skilled is not a pejorative. It's not an insult. It's a globally recognized economic point in the spectrum of contributions financially and in terms of certain skills. So when I hear it thrown out there, mostly by the left, as if it's an insult or even slightly xenophobic to use the term low-skilled. I heard people having a field day at the time of that. It's a genuine economic term, okay, that is used. But in terms of who we're looking for, and I've banged on about this for some time, and I've always referred to this as the coffee shop test. In short, if you set the bar high in terms of capability and skills, who's going to work in all the coffee shops? And for coffee shops, read bars, hospitality, restaurants, retail, those kind of areas. This country is hugely dependent on low-skilled workers in these sectors. It's also worth pointing out, of course, that in terms of the amount of Brits that work in those places, there are already some that do. So we do know that. But have a listen to these stats on the recent immigration figures as far as we know. Okay, so these are from last year, but they're the latest in terms of what we know. So these are from the ONS official figures, unequivocal figures. Overall net migration to the UK, that's EU and non-EU countries, last year was 212,000. Now, that's been one of the lowest figures, interestingly, we've seen. Partly, one assumes, due to Brexit. There could be other factors, of course. Value of the pound, some EU countries doing better than they previously were, so fewer people want to leave their home country. But nonetheless, 212,000 combined. Non-EU migration, I've long thought, this is where the real story is, actually has risen. EU migration has dropped. And it's worth remembering, however, that EU migration in this country was at net 200,000 a year as recently as 2015. Now, we've got a recession looming, as does everybody else. We might well need some of those low-skilled workers, will Brits essentially take up those positions? If you got rid of every single person currently working in a Costa, a Nero or a Starbucks, and I would suggest, and we've tried to look for the official data, it's hard to find. I think Starbucks globally were employing something like, was it in the States? Something like 90 different nationalities. And we know that in this country, if you go into an obvious area like a coffee shop, in many parts of the UK, you are likely to see a foreign worker, most possibly an Eastern European worker, in those places. Now, according to this points-based system, it would be unlikely that any of those workers were going to make it to the UK. I can't see how you would score 70 on the dial. It would have to be, you've got to be earning a minimum of 22,000. I don't think everybody in barista positions earns 22,000. So you'd have to genuinely ask the question, who's going to take up the slack? Will Brits take up those jobs? And I genuinely ask this question. I do not know the answer. I wish I did know the answer. What I'm wondering here, if you removed every EU worker from a coffee shop tomorrow, would British people take up that job? Because you have to reasonably assume this will not happen. The Home Office has announced, of course, that points will be added for professions where there is a shortage. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Are the government about to kick you in the whatsits in terms of this immigration policy? Because they've left themselves open to quite a lot of wiggle room. If you go to the Home Office Twitter account, for example, there's a nice shiny video there that talks about the points system. And one of the factors, how do you get your points to come to the UK? Certain much needed professions and skills is on there. People who speak English is on there. And areas where there is a shortage. Wow. I mean, that is a potential here for having an immigration policy that looks exactly the same as it does today. So if you voted, for example, for Brexit based on this area, and some people did, not unreasonably, by the way, some people did, are you going to be disappointed? Are the government about to kick Brexit voters where it hurts? Or are you supremely relaxed about there almost being no difference to the level of immigration? Or will there be a new normal post-coronavirus where actually we will see British people take up those jobs? Because that's always, to me, been the most obvious. It's crude, it's basic, it's route one. Who will work in the coffee shops? 0344 499 1000. And extend that to areas of retail, areas where you are likely to see quite a lot of European people working in those sectors. You know they're not earning $22,000 a year. Some of them are part-time. Some might be students as well. Some of them are passing through. They're all paying their taxes, all legitimately here. If you factor all of those people out, who's going to take the jobs? Because based on what we're seeing, based on what we know, unless post-coronavirus there's going to be such a shortage of jobs that people will naturally take up that slack, which would be a piece of welcome serendipity for the government, because that certainly wouldn't have been planned. So there isn't one system here. When they talk about a new immigration system, there isn't one system. There are many systems based on skill levels. Trade deals, for example. The government might do a trade deal, and that trade deal means, oh my goodness, we've got a trade deal in this sector. We're going to need extra workers. So if you're skilled and you're European and you have those particular facets, you might get a free pass to come to the UK. So there isn't one policy. The more I look at what Priti Patel is talking about here, there isn't one policy. Because if you have to score 70 points, that means you've got a variety of chances of ticking all the boxes. Will you get the immigration policy you want? Will you get the immigration policy you think you were promised? And can I ask this as well? Given that there are more non-EU migrants coming to this country, what's the take on that? Because this was very much about Brexit, and Brexit being able to, the phrase was take back control of our borders, and therefore immigration and free movement of people goes, and we decide who comes in. That's, by the way, when I hear Remainers banging on about that as if that doesn't mean anything, or we already have control. Well, we palpably do not, okay? That is a lie, all right? There are certain levels of control you can have. You couldn't, as a member of the EU, suddenly decide no one is allowed to come to your country. That is not part of... So anybody who tells you that is lying to you. So we will have a different level of control. But my point is, will it look any different? When all is said and done, when Priti Patel has put this into place, when all of these policies and point systems are up and running, and we sit back and we have a little look at the landscape, at the jobs market around the UK, is it going to look any different? When you walk in to that Costa or Pret or Starbucks or Nero, in a year from now, are you only likely to see British workers behind the counter? 0344 499 1000. And if that isn't the case, have this government lied to you? Especially if you voted Brexit, do you feel a little let down here? Because there's only one of two things can happen as far as I can see this. Either because of the coronavirus pandemic and the shortage of jobs, we will see more Brits take up positions they might not have done previously, but that will just be good luck for the government because that wasn't in the script. Or nothing will change. I'm just wondering, if you voted Brexit, and over 17 million people did, and part of your thinking when you went to the ballot box on June 2016 was about immigration numbers, specifically and particularly EU immigration numbers, are you going to feel let down by this? Because Priti Patel has left herself a lot of wiggle room here. Not a tiny bit, a lot. There it is. It's explicit within the policy. Areas where there are a shortage of workers will score you more points. Areas where there are a shortage of workers. So you think hospitality, plumbing. Oh, look, there's a shortage of workers. Have 25 points for that. We thought it was only going to be 5 points, but a year's time, everything looks the same, which might, by the way, be fine. I'm merely asking this of you. If this is the way you voted, and this is part of the reason why you voted in that way.